Hello again, and welcome to another episode of the Noble Father Podcast. Happy Monday to you. Today is August the 26th of 2024. And if you're joining us for the first time, I'm your host, Theophilus. I am a solo entrepreneur who is running a business, and my boss is God. So, today I want to share about something that's very near and dear to my heart. This product of the podcast and the community and the membership and the retreats and all the stuff that we do here at Noble Father is an entrepreneurial pursuit. In saying that, it is one of those conversations in which people are not necessarily ready for. They think that, to serve fathers, it has to be something that is nonprofit. And, this is a dilemma that, I've been trying to figure out for the longest time. Really, this isn't a me project. This is a God project. And God laid this before me. He put it on my heart to be an entrepreneur. And so as I pursue this pursuit, I feel like God was using this opportunity as an experiment to show fathers that, hey, you can take what God has given you to leverage to be the best that you can be as a father, be as present as you can be, because there's so many things that you can do as an entrepreneur. And we're in a day and age where corporate greed is this very, very big thing. It's something that people can't truly grasp, right? If you're an employee at a corporation, and let's just say you had record profits. Recently, you had this story of this corporation that exceeded their sales targets, right? And as a reward from the upper management, they treated the team to pizza, right? Cheap little pizza lunch dinner thing, and they had to get back at it. They had to get back to it. And this is something to me that's corporate greed to me. Profits, I feel like, is something to be shared amongst everybody who puts in the hard work, especially if, the upper management, I'm not saying they don't do much, but when other people are helping you make the money and doing much of the grunt work, you should be rewarding them in kind rather than just a one-off pizza dinner. And then you have things like layoffs, right? Corporations, when it comes to thick and thin, will save itself. And so you as an employee, well, you get laid off regardless of your resume, regardless of your loyalty to the company. The company doesn't care. The company cares about itself. It cares about its own skin. And so, being an entrepreneur, I feel like is something that truly God was like Jesus was an entrepreneur. Jesus was a carpenter. He had his own treasure, Judas, right? Paul was in tent making, right? Making tents, right? This is something that you do, right? So that this has to be something that was funding ministry for, like, funding Jesus's ministry even, right? And his ministry lasted 3 years, but he had to fund it. That money had to come from somewhere. Now, that obviously back in those days, it'd probably be very, very difficult to do something like that, right? Let's just think about nonprofits today. How does it work? Well, somebody wants to donate money. They have a QR code, or they can text message and give to an organization, and that money gets, sent to them, and they get to use those funds for something. Back in the day, there was nothing. People kept their money in pouches. There was no banking system. There was no e-transfers. There were no any bank drafts or checks that you could write to somebody. So, there was no way for the resources of others or churches that wanted to support to do something like that. Yeah, maybe if Paul was passing by a city and there was a church there that wanted to support him, provide for him there. But there was no way for us to, sustainably continue to do that. And it's not like once you're at that church, you can go back there to get the resources that you need. Paul's going to other places. Disciples are going to other places to spread the love of God. And they need sustenance consistently. And so I think being an entrepreneur is part of the ministry call. And that's something that God has placed very heavily on my heart. I grew up as a missionary's kid through 7 years of Venezuela when I was 3. I went to China as well when I was 21. And I spent another 7 years there, really. So I learned Spanish in Venezuela. I learned Chinese in China, doing ministry in different regards, right? Obviously, when I was 3 in Venezuela, there wasn't much ministry. I mean, yeah, was I technically doing ministry? I guess, yeah, I guess in part I was. I was part of ministry. And then in China, I'm there serving other people, learning the language. It's always funded by donations or support, and like it's sustainable, of course. God provides ultimately for everything, and so it doesn't matter if you're doing business or doing nonprofit. But I think if God's calling you to the nonprofit, fine. But I think that we should also be thinking from our own gifts of what we've been given to leverage to help others, which in itself is a ministry in itself. I honestly believe that everybody is in ministry. Everybody is doing some kind of work. There's people that you can talk to that I can't. And so, today I want to talk about something, when we talk about corporate greed, we also talk about size, right, and scaling. And when you think about entrepreneurs nowadays, they think about venture capitalists or investor money, and you have to grow and scale and hire, right, and all these processes. Interestingly, a few weeks ago, after the retreat, picking up my dad, what have you, there's a lot of time we're spending in other cities. There's a city like an hour away, which is, closer to the airport. And Echo and I like to go and browse like thrift stores. And usually when I go to a thrift store, I look at stuff like books. And on this particular visit, I stumbled across a book written by a guy named Paul Jarvis. And the name of the book it stands out right away to me, right? Because really it's how I've been, it's how I'm creating this business right now. It's called The Company of One: Why Staying Small is the Next Big Thing for Business. Now, one of the things about business is, like I said, you feel like you need to grind all the time. You need to go hard, right? Work 80-hour weeks. The idea is going to fail if you don't work on yourself, if you don't do this and you don't do that. It's always a go, go, go mentality. It's never a slow down, plan your moves. There are gurus and experts out there who tell you that you got to go, go, go all the time. What's the next thing you got to do? You got to grind. You got to, who's going to carry the boats? And, you need to do all of these things. And you just got to keep going, marketing and sales and all these things. But there's also other people out there who are running businesses where they only work 4 hours a week, right? Tim Ferriss, right, wrote the 4-hour work week. There's others that, teach about stuff like, you don't have to grind so much, or learning about balance, right? One of the things about being an entrepreneur, if you're not a father, is, are you able to grind and just go all out and not worry about responsibilities with kids, their schooling or their health, or they needing to eat, easier for them to do, right? If you're a single guy running a business, grind, nonstop, right? You can do that. Whereas for a father, and for a Christian father, right, one that has a relationship with God, an active relationship with God, those are balls that I need to juggle. And these are balls that I can't afford to drop. And so is there a way to find the balance? Work on your business, make a profit doing it, also serving other people, and fulfilling a ministry calling through business. And this has really been a life journey experience for me, right? I came back from China 2016 and brought my family with me. My son was 9 months old. And my wife, who'd never lived in Canada before, was now with us. She'd only traveled to Canada 2 times before that. And, immediately what's the first thing you think about? Got to get a job. Trades, get into trades. Everybody always says trades, go into trades. Or, at first I was car detailing. I was detailing with cars with my then brother-in-law. And, I was making $100 cash every single day. paid some of the bills. It didn't have to pay rent, obviously. Just got back, and mom and dad allowed us to stay at their place, and we got by. But you don't. The thing about growth is you never want to stay in one place too long, right? If that's not where you're supposed to be, you better be working towards what that next place is. Now, this is one of those lessons that fathers need to hear, because so many get stuck in one place. They get stagnant, they don't grow. And then inevitable, you are putting your whim and will at a company that eventually one day in a downturn could sacrifice you, just lay you off completely. Then you have nowhere to go. Suddenly you've been there 20 years. You are now too old to be hired anywhere else with any new experience or new roles. So your growth has to be constant. You always have to move with it. And so when I was at the car detailing place, I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. Like, it was just not a thing for me. I was already starting to have this entrepreneurial itch, right? This itch to want to work for myself. I knew that the working for the man was not going to cut it. And so, where do you go, right? Really from there, I was like, okay, well, running one day running a trades business, right? Trades is something that people always say, oh yeah, it's reliable. Everybody's going to need it. Doesn't matter in the downturn. Somebody's going to need their house fixed, or, and I thought in my head, oh, Jesus was a carpenter, so maybe I should be a carpenter. So I, looked up what it meant to be an apprentice. How do you be an apprentice? And you have to find a company to sponsor you. And so found a company that did windows and doors. And they, took me on and said, oh yeah, we'd be willing to train you, and found me a sponsor. And he was a good old Christian guy. He had his red seal, which is kind of the like fully certified, I guess you could say. It's a short way to understand it for those American guys out there. So I started working for him, and man, it is grunt work, right? Because you're starting from the very bottom as an apprentice. I'm not very big either, right? I was 5'7", maybe like 100 at the time, maybe 150 pounds, maybe. And you're lifting these ladder jacks. You're lifting ladders that are bigger than you. You're lifting these planks that you stand on between two ladders. Like, these things are heavy, and it was grueling on me. But one of the major things that stuck out for me was that time balance was something that I couldn't command. There would be projects that would have to leave, like go to the island, which is like, 2 hours, 3 hours away. Got to take a ferry and be away from my family from. At that point, I already had my son, right? He was 9 months old, actually probably about 1 year old whenever I started the apprenticeship stuff. That was not the kind of father I wanted to be, right? Being a present father was something that I said I wanted to grow up being. It was a very specific goal. It was a very specific calling that I wanted, that I was called to in my life. You've heard my story about how, my dad was very busy in ministry, and I didn't get a lot of time with him. And I just knew in my heart that was not something I wanted to do in my journey as a father. So, over time, it just got worse and worse, and maybe the circumstances had it where it was easier to make that decision. My boss was always micromanaging me, and like, I just got into it with him, right? One time driving, and he's telling me when to brake and when to accelerate. And it was just like, it just got to be too much. And I remember that car ride was the last one. We got to our location, and I said, hey, I quit. I can't do this anymore. I'm not seeing my family. I get home late at night. I see them only for an hour before he has to go to bed, and then I'm gone. And then the next day in the morning, before I come back and do the same thing over, including dinner. So it was just not the lifestyle I wanted, and I knew that was it. And so I quit, and fumbling for what to do next. What was the next thing? And at the time, my dad was still doing the nonprofit stuff, and so he's like, you've been to China, what we're about. Why don't you come back on with us and do some administrative stuff with the organization? And so, got back on with him. But then, one of those things about, doing nonprofit stuff is that, again, you're funded by other people's donations and their support. And if it dries up and slows down, then you bear the brunt of it. I certainly bore the brunt of it. And he always told us, my mom told me as well, of like, you can't rely on this as a forever income. And that got my head going, right? Like, what does that mean? Okay, so what do we do now, right? I'm working kind of very, very part-time with this organization. I got so much time on my hands. Like, what am I doing with my life? And I remember praying. I remember getting on my knees actually and praying to God. I was like, Lord, what do you want me to do? Like, where do we go from here? And why Maple Ridge, right? Why the city that I'm living in right now? And God answered, right? I remember getting off getting off of the prayer, finishing my prayer, and just sat on the computer, opened up Google, and I looked up Ideas 2017. And that's a very broad search term. If you know anything about search results and stuff, Ideas 2017, you're not really going to get anything crazy. Second, I remember seeing the results. The second one really caught my attention. I looked at it, clicked it, and this person was talking about, running a digital marketing business, right? Starting your own kind of entrepreneurial thing. And, I'm very tech-minded, very tech-savvy, and understanding, knowing that internet's not going away. So anything revolving around the internet would sustain itself, and that even in a downturn, I'd be able to find work. And so started my entrepreneurial journey in that was February of 2017. And so that kick-started everything for me, right? When I tell people about the journey, doing technology and doing digital marketing, that was really utilizing 40% of my potential, because, there was this human component that I was missing. And through different ventures, slowly getting to that point, I walked into SaaS. SaaS is like software as a service, right? Selling a piece of software to people and making a recurring monthly income from them. And that was getting me really close. I was serving coaches at the time, and it was wonderful work, enjoyable, right? Because you get to interact with people, and I really felt like that interacting with people, listening to their problems and hearing them, holding space for them, was kind of that call. But it was interesting, because as you're talking to coaches, right, if you're a coach, you are inherently great at holding space for other people and questioning them, asking them, seeking their potential, like seeking their best potential. And a lot of them at that time, when I was marketing to them, were asking me, like, how come you're not a coach yourself? And they're saying that you should be a coach yourself. I remember this was like a span of like 4 months, I think. And I heard it like 5-6 different times from other people, from other coaches. And I was like, wow, yeah, like, why am I not taking the leap here? Right. SaaS, doing the SaaS sales, software as a service, excuse me. I felt like it was like 70% of the way to my maximizing my potential and what I was gifted with. Right. And that was whenever I was like, okay, well, maybe this is something to think about. I need to lean into this, and there might be something here. Obviously, unbeknownst to them, before we came back from China, we were looking at Hong Kong being the place for us to settle. And we were talking to a mentor there, and this mentor walked me through an assessment of strength called StrengthsFinder, in which I found out that I would make a very good counselor or a coach. And so, for them to say this now, almost like this is probably like already 5 years later, like 4 years later, I was like, wow, this is very coincidental. Obviously not coincidental. It's orchestrated, right? God had his plan, timing, right? For me to pick up all these skills along the way to now finally take a leap in my coaching business into business, yeah, right? And to readjust, right? To pivot, I guess that's the word, pivot. And so, got into coaching. And, one of the first things was God was like, nope, if you want to coach other people, you better be willing to swallow the Kool-Aid first. I'm going to make you drink this Kool-Aid first. So thus began this very transformational experience of growing from the inside out, learning who I am and who I was called to be and who God created me to be and what God sees in me, regardless of everything that I've ever done, and how he sees me. And that it was at this point that I learned about that he called me noble after everything I've done. Noble is, and I'm going to look up the definition from Oxford Dictionary. It says having or showing fine personal qualities or high moral principles and ideals. Now you can see how I would, as a human and as a critic of myself, I'd say, man, you did a good job of not holding on to these fine personal qualities and morals and whatever. But God still sees me as this white sheep, white lamb, innocent, regardless of all the sins that I've committed. That's what Jesus' death on the cross meant, atonement for my iniquities and the things that I did wrong. Thus I can be called a noble father. Thus all the other men in my group can be called a noble father because Jesus paid for it all. Jesus was the atonement for all the things that you've done. And so every single father is a noble father. So back on the topic of the entrepreneurial pursuit. If you're a father listening to this right now and you're struggling with where you're at and the place that you're at and you've gone stagnant, and I want you to know that you're not promised tomorrow at this corporation or this company that you're working with. You are not promised tomorrow. At any point you can get laid off. And I've had conversations with dads. This conversation comes up so much. Like, I just got laid off. Now I don't have work. And now I don't know how I'm going to provide for my family. What do I do? And one of the first things that comes to mind is, dude, then you waited too long. I feel like working for a company should just be like a placeholder. You stay there for a bit. You always got to find more. You always got to keep pushing. You always got to keep growing. You can't get comfortable anywhere because it might not last. Yeah, I guess the same could be said about entrepreneurial pursuit, but you have wings to fly. You have ways and techniques to provide for yourself. You have skills that you can leverage. Obviously, if God's calling you to it, you should be moving towards it. And if you don't have that relationship with God, man, then I really think that you need to get your relationship going again. Get attuned to his voice because he is giving you direction. He's giving me direction in how to grow this business. He is teaching me things through small things like a book. Why staying small is the next big thing in business. I've been thinking in my mind of Lord, I need to scale. I need to grow. How do I grow? And one of the principles in this book, really, it's interesting, is you have existing clients. These people they know, like, and trust you. They are willing to go to the ends of the earth with you. They want to support you. Keeping them, providing for them, and continuing to add value to them is more profitable than going out to find another father, finding new customers. They say it takes 5 times more energy and resources to get a new client than it is to keep an existing one. And so you can imagine losing one is just devastating, obviously. Nobody wants to do that. But going out to find a new one while you have existing ones is also dangerous because this existing one is waiting for you for value, right? They want it from you. So you should be the one that keeps providing that value. You should increase the value, increase what you're giving them, and thus the value that you get in return, the return on investment of what you're putting in for value. They are more willing to part ways with more of their own resources. Now, the author ended up quitting a corporate job and started working for himself, doing consultancy work, and moved out to an island out here in Vancouver and started, living on his own, surfing, living the life, living an entrepreneurial's life, just going where he wants to go, being where he wants to be, spending time however he wants to spend it. And isn't that the dream for a father, right? I've asked so many fathers, and a lot of their dreams are, I want to travel with my children. I want to travel with them. I want to make memories, eternal memories with my kids. I don't know how you could do that with a 2-week vacation every single year. If that's enough for you, I mean, I don't know what to say. There should be more. If you could get more, wouldn't you want more? And I really feel like everybody has the entrepreneurial ability. Everybody is able to make something of themselves. Obviously, if God's not calling you to it, then nothing I can say about that. And there are those who are great at running companies and are called to that. But if you have that urge and that desire, I definitely think that you should lean in and discover if that's something for you. And I want to give you some verses about what the Bible says about entrepreneurial pursuits, or, with the work of your hands, the wisdom for the diligent, right? And I'm just going to spit these off. There's no correlation to each of these, and maybe we'll talk about them as we go along. Proverbs 22:29 says, "Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men." And this is talking of masterpiece. Your hands are meant to create masterpieces. You are meant to serve before kings, not just obscure men. And so in your work, can you take pride in it? And take pride in what you've created, the product that you've made, because it's not just for obscure men, it's for kings. And for kings, in the sense of this product, Noble Father, my prayer every single time that I get to work on it is, Lord, this is your work, this is your business. May it be, how do I say this? May it be glorious to you. May it be an offering to you. And may you be proud of what is being built here. Proverbs 16:3 says, "Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established." And real and true, since I've started Noble Father, we started with the Zoom meetups, and as we've iterated new things, trying breakout groups, trying prompts, doing weekly challenges, doing accountability masterminds, and then going to the paid route this year, right? Doing paid memberships now, and doing courses, and doing merch stores, and all this stuff God has placed before us, and we have walked diligently with it, and He has established the plan. Doing the retreats, like God met us on those retreats. God wanted that community. He wanted that kind of fellowship to take place. And so I've really committed this work to the Lord, and He's built it with me. Like, He's given me the plan to build it. And sometimes I don't get it right, and I backtrack, right? Lord, what was the last thing you said? Okay, meetups. Go back to the meetups, and do what was last said. Proverbs 13:11 says, "Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it." And this makes me think of, the parable of talents. If you don't know the parable of talents, it was a business manager who gave, reset assets and called it talents, which was like obviously the money currency in the day. Gave them 5 talents. And he gave one 10, 5, and 1, I believe. And so they went out and they went to go grow this, as workers, go and grow this inheritance that you've been given. You've been given resources. Go and make this money grow is essentially what a business manager would do. One of them went out and doubled his money. The other went out, doubled his money as well. The 10 and the 5 doubled it. And, the last guy took his 1 talent, and I guess he just, buried it in the mud, in the sand or somewhere, because he was scared that he would lose that money. So he risked nothing and gained nothing as a result of it. So when it came time for the business manager to look at what happened, the guy with 10 came back, said he doubled the money, and he said, "Oh, good and faithful servant, I'm going to entrust you with more because I gave you so much and you doubled it." Same with the second guy, until the last guy came out and said, "Hey, like, here's your coin back. I was scared that you were a really you'd be angry if I lost this, so I risked nothing and I gained nothing for you." And to this servant, he threw out, and because they were not wise, they were not diligent, they didn't make use of these talents. Now, it's a currency thing, but think about it even from your own talents, things that you've been given by God that is unique to you, that you can leverage to bring glory to God, obviously, but also to maximize your potential. You are meant to do something amazing in your life. You're not meant to just grind away as a janitor or whatever it is that you do for work. If God has a calling on you to do more and you don't meet that potential, you've wasted your talent. You've buried it, risking nothing, and you've done nothing. And what happens in that situation? Well, God says, you're not a faithful servant. You haven't been a good and faithful servant. Throw them out because you haven't done anything. You didn't. What were the fruits of your life? It's something that really comes up a lot for me recently is, what are the fruits of your life? Internet debates, right? I'm just going to be blunt. Internet debates. right? Anybody can just go on my page and just, start a discussion and, start a debate and challenge me on my beliefs and what have you. But then ultimately, I think in my heart, in my head of like, what are your fruits? Like, you're debating with me, like, show me what are the results you have, right? Well, they're not any fruits that I should just disregard. I really feel like if you're not doing anything with your life, like, why do I have to regard you? Why I could just disregard you because there's nothing. There's no fruits, right? And so I'm not going to waste my time from now on. I've learned that lesson to not poke, not to just leave it, because you're challenging people who don't take action on their own lives. They just use words. And I'm going to talk about this because there's more verses that I'm going to share, and it actually talks about this. Proverbs 14:23 says, "In all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty." In all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty. And so, one of the things you'll hear us iterate over and over again on the podcast and in the meetups is that, if you said it, you better do it. If you said it, you better do it. And so, I've said it. There's a lot of things that I've said that I haven't done yet, but I'm always trying my best to do it. Where's your heart at? You know in your heart whether or not you've done it right or not. So if you have an entrepreneurial pursuit and you have ideas and you've always said that you wanted to do something, man, I hope you take action today. May this podcast be your sign to go and do something about it. And if you don't know where to start small, start simple. Come find me and we'll figure something out. Let's try to figure this out. Proverbs 10:4 says, "A slack hand causes poverty, but the hands of the diligent makes rich." Slack hand causes poverty, and the hand of the diligent makes rich. Luke 16:10 says, one who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much." That's a really, really deep verse. One who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. Because parable of talents again. If you gave that, bad servant that didn't grow the money 10 talents, and you reversed it, right? The faithful servant had 1 talent. He still grows that. He still doubles that. The one with the 10 can bury the talent and still do nothing and gain nothing on those talents. And so that who is trusted with little cannot be trusted with much, but that who can be trusted with little can be trusted with more. That is essential of this, right? If you want to grow a business, like, this is a business principle, right? You need to be trusted with little in order to be trusted with a lot. And that's why if you can't just grow a business, just plop in inheritance of a $10 million company and try and just run with it. You don't have the capacity to run it. You're not going to be able to succeed and thrive doing it. And this is the last one I'll say because, this is very important. And that talent, the conversation of talent, James 2:26 says, "For as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead. For as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead." So part of this journey of life, if you are a person who aspires to faith, is that know that your faith has to produce work. There has to be fruits of your labor. A bad tree does not bear good fruit, and a good tree does not bear bad fruit. The same as that Luke 16:10, right? Trust with little, much will be given. Trust with lot, less will be given, right? And you distrusted with much, less will be given. So think about that for your own life. You are in such a place right now in the world where the company of one is not it's not a wild concept. You can run a company by yourself. You can do all the things you want by yourself. You can create, and I've done it with my business, making reels, doing the marketing, finding people, right? Turning a profit with goodness, with a good intention in mind, right? Holding space for men in a meetup and allowing them to find the camaraderie that they can't find locally, right? Helping them to solve a problem and monetizing on that, providing value on top of that, providing coaching on top of that, connecting them to resources on top of that. That is all value that somebody can give. And there's no better time right now than to start today, because internet is here. There are so many different ways to go about different strategies. There's different companies that you can run. You can do an affiliate marketing play. You can do content creation that will lead somewhere. You can run a blog. There's just so many things for fathers to be able to take their time back, build a legacy that lasts and is able to be passed down to children and impact generations to come. I hope this noble father work would be something I pass down to my son eventually. He's already told me he wants to be a noble father, right? Other dads in my group are already excited about what their children might get to take part in this one day when they become a father as well. This is going to be an eternal play. This is going to be a project that is going to impact so many generations, fathers forever and ever. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're called to do, right? This is talents that I've been given. And rather than risking nothing and burying it in the ground, I am taking it, following God's hand, following God's leading, and building a business that he would be proud of, and one in which I seek in my end of days, when I'm in heaven standing before God in judgment, that he would say to me that you are a good and faithful servant. That is my assignment. That is my temporal, physical plane assignment. And I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. And I hope that if you're listening to this podcast right now, I hope you really think and ask yourself in your heart, what is God calling you towards? And if you don't have a relationship with God, I highly recommend you start to think about having a relationship with God, because he guides your steps. He cares about you. Even those who don't have a relationship with God provides for you. God provides for them. Even the birds of the air, it says in the Bible, that God provides for you, provides for them. And so how can you push away a God that is loving? And if you've been hurt by the church before, if you're hurt by other people who are Christians, call themselves Christians, I want you to know that that is man-made hurt. That is man making a stink of what God is doing. They contradict what God believes. They contradict what the God of love believes. And he would never harm his children. But I just want you to know that God's will accounts for human error. And so however you reached where you are right now to be listening to this podcast, God intended for those things to happen, for a better result to happen in your life. And so I hope you don't disregard this message. I hope you lean into this message. And if you don't know where to begin, hey, reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Nothing pushy about it, right? If it's not for you, fine, right? It's not on me. I don't want my words to be what convinces you. I want God and a relationship with you, God's relationship with you, to be a personal one, not one in which I do any kind of convincing or salesy or snake oil salesman stuff. I hope this finds you well. If you want to have conversations about entrepreneurship or whatever, feel free to reach out to me. Also, if you're a dad who's looking for community, who needs a space to just open up and be honest and say in a safe and confidential environment, feel free to reach out to me. We are a paid membership now, and so you do have to pay and invest money in yourself to grow and to be a part of this community. Feel free to reach out for more information on that. I'll put the link in the description of the podcast. And hey, don't forget to share this episode with your friends and family, because I would love more attention for this, right? We want to get this message out before more people, and I'm looking to grow this membership, and I can't do it without you. And so thank you for joining me for today's episode. I hope this week guides you well. And and always remember, right? We're not promised tomorrow. So stay present and be noble.